I want to begin with a question I asked myself late one evening, sitting alone in my classroom in rural Minnesota. The lights were off except for one small lamp. The shelves were reset. The materials were carefully returned to their places. The classroom was quiet in the way Montessori environments often are after a full day of work with children. And in that quiet moment, I found myself asking a question I had never asked before. How do I sustain my professional growth when there is no system designed to support it? I am a Montessori early childhood educator. I believe deeply in child-centered education. I believe in prepared environments. I believe in respect for developing the human being. In Montessori education, we spend enormous care designing environments where children can thrive. We think about lighting, movement, independence, and community. We ask ourselves constantly, what does the child need in order to grow? But one day I realized something uncomfortable. I had built a prepared environment for children, but no one had built one for me. There was no statewide mentorship network, no coordinated advocacy, no consistent professional community, and no infrastructure to help me grow as a leader. And slowly and quietly, isolation began to feel normal. Let me share a moment that made this real for me. One winter afternoon, a young teacher stopped by to visit my classrooms to look at them in all the different classrooms that we have. She had just begun her own career in early childhood education, and she stayed after school asking thoughtful questions about Montessori materials and guiding the children and about classroom community. At one point, she said something that stuck with me. She said, "I love this work, but I feel like I'm trying to figure it all out by myself." And I remember thinking, that sentence felt so familiar. Because I had said almost the same thing to myself many times. And that's when I began to wonder, is this just one educator's experience, or is this something bigger happening? At first I thought it was just me. Maybe I wasn't networking hard enough. Maybe I wasn't attending enough conferences. Or maybe I was just trying hard enough to stay connected. That's what we often tell ourselves as educators. If we are exhausted, it's personal. If we feel alone, it's personal. If we struggle to navigate systems, it's a personal issue. We assume the solution must be to just try harder, work later, read more, attend another workshop, push through the exhaustion. But one day I stopped asking a very familiar question. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? I asked, is this happening to others? The question changed everything. Everything. So I did what educators do. I researched. Not from a university lab, not from an outside system, from within inside of it. Because educators are researchers too. We observe, we document, we analyze patterns. It's what we do every day with children. So I applied the same lens to my own profession. I conducted interviews with Montessori leaders across Minnesota. I spoke with Indigenous educators about community-based education models. I examined every childhood system structures. I created a SWOT analysis, and I distributed a statewide survey. What I discovered was startling. It wasn't just me. Over half of the respondents reported that they do not feel represented at state level policy discussions. Nearly half reported inadequate representation in mixed delivery systems. And 92% supported the creation of a statewide Montessori alliance. 92%. This wasn't a coincidence, this was a pattern. What I thought was a personal professional struggle was actually a structural gap. Isolation wasn't an individual weakness, it was an infrastructure failure. When isolation is structural, the solution must also be structural. We don't need more resilient workshops. We need relational infrastructure. We need mentorship ecosystems. We need professional communities beyond individual schools. We need advocacy at decision-making tables. And we need statewide alliances so educators are not navigating all these systems on their own and alone. What began as a question about how I could sustain my own professional growth became something much larger. It became a question about workforce sustainability, about rural access, about Indigenous leadership, about credential recognition, and about who gets supported and who doesn't. In rural communities especially, educators often operate at the edges of our systems. Professional development opportunities may be hours away. Leadership networks are limited. And yet these educators are shaping the earliest years of human development. So the question becomes, how do we ensure they are supported, connected, and heard? When a practitioner asks an honest question and listens deeply, something powerful happens. Individuals' frustration can become collective clarity. And collective clarity can become action. Today, early steps are already underway with partnership conversations, exploration of rural professional development pathways, discussions about how a statewide Montessori Alliance could support mentorship, advocacy, and community. None of this started because I had a grand strategic plan. It started because I asked a better question. Instead of asking, how do I fix myself? I asked, what if the system needs to grow? If you are an educator in this room, and you may have ever felt alone in your profession, I want you to consider something. Your isolation may not be personal. It may be structural. And we name the structural gaps. We create the possibility of structural solutions. Professional sustainability is not an individual responsibility. It is a collective design challenge. And when we build prepared environments for educators, not just children, we strengthen our entire communities. I began this journey trying to sustain myself, and I stand here now recognizing that sustainability is not a solo act. It is a shared structure. And when we move from why can't I do this alone to why are we expected to, That is when change begins. Thank you.